This is called the Leaning Tower of Pisa, obviously. It's about 180 feet or 85 feet tall, depending on which side of the lean it's going on. It's amazing. It's 14,500 metric tons. It's amazingly big. It's heavy. But the reason that it leans, the problem is the foundation. And they discovered the problem with the foundation in the very process of building the building. And so it was built in the 12th century. And what that means is that for 800 years, they have been trying to get this thing not to lean. Well, honestly, they tried to get it not to lean for about 500 years. And then they figured out that it was a great tourist spot, and so they tried to get it to lean a little bit less. And so it went from 6-degree lean, they got it to a 4-degree lean, and they hope they have it stabilized, okay? But here's the deal. The foundation that you build will determine the stability of the building, right? We know that. And here's the reality. The foundation that you build will determine the stability of your marriage, too. And so we're going to talk about what is the foundation that will keep it from leaning and continuing to lean and eventually fall down. Okay? Now, we're calling our this series that we're talking about marriage and family, the family circus, because sometimes it can feel that way, and it is that way. But what we're going to do here on Sunday mornings is focus and try to discover and to examine biblical paradigms for what this is all about in marriage and family. We're not going to try to avoid cultural collisions, but we're not looking for a fight either. And so our main focus is going to be in looking at biblical paradigms, and then you and I have the responsibility to look at that and compare it and decide what you feel like you can live with and kind of follow after. So in Romans 12, and this is why I use the scriptures, Romans 12:2 says this. It says, "Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God. And that the will of God, it is good in its nature, that it's acceptable, it's embraceable, it's doable. And in fact, it's perfect." That's what God's will is. And we find God's will in His Word. And so we're going to examine what this thing is all about. So far in Genesis, we spent some weeks in Genesis 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in Genesis 1, we found this, that mankind is primarily defined, and first and foremost, is having a soul, a spirit. In fact, that God has breathed into us His very life. We're not defined first and foremost by being male or female. We are defined first and foremost by being made in the image of God, and that He breathed His life into us. He gave us what's called a soul, and it's eternal in nature. And He breathed it into us, the very reason that we exist, the very reason we have a conscience, the very reason that there is a soulish dimension is because God breathed it into mankind. And as a result, we are equally carry the responsibility as husband and wife, as man and woman, we equally carry the responsibility of having dominion over the world, of caring for what He created. He gave it to us. Is that like an incredible? He delegated it to us. He said, hey, run the thing. You have dominion. Treat it right. Do it well. Well, it's a big responsibility. Secondly, in Genesis 1 and 2, though, we find that mankind reveals the image of God in the united yet unique expression of male and female. God created this binary thing of male and female. Now, we live in a day and age where marriage is trying to be redefined. Family is being redefined. Gender is being redefined. And it's a challenge, and it's hard. And we can either take it on as a battle and see if we can get into as much conflict as possible, or we can be compassionate and understanding without giving up what we think the Scriptures teach and for what reason they do, and that they're for good reason, and it's for our good. So, and it also defeats this male-female thing, addresses at least the issue of aloneness in our lives. We'll talk more about that in a while. And it is aloneness in a covenant with one another where we get to live this thing out in the safety of a covenant with someone else. A commitment, an undying, unchangeable commitment to each other. Wow. Well, then last week in Genesis 3 and 4, we talked about this. The foolishness of mankind is this. It is not appreciating that we have been made in the image of God. And we don't appreciate the fact that He's given us dominion and responsibility. But instead, we want to usurp His authority, which God is His and His alone. And we've decided to take it on for ourselves. That's exactly what happened in Genesis 3. He said, I want to be like God. I want to do what he does. I want to be him. I want to replace his authority in my life with my authority in my life. We do whatever we choose. And then lastly, that our shame drives us to hide from one another and to hide from God himself. I can't even verbalize the tragedy in the world today and in our lives of what happened in Genesis 3 and 4, where we began to hide from each other, not real with one another. And it goes so deep that we don't even know we're doing it. And we hide from God. We run away from him. And as a result, we reject our responsibility to actually love. It's an incredible tragedy, and we're still living with it today. Maybe more than ever before, I don't know. But that's where we're at, so it's a kind of a mess. But today we want to jump into 2 weeks that we're going to talk about Ephesians chapter 5. Now, typically, the substance of what's talked about marriage in Ephesians chapter 5 starts in verse 22 and it goes through verse 33. It is the core substance. It's this beautiful, amazing thing. And what we're going to do is talk about that next week. But I'm afraid almost every time I've looked at any passages about marriage, if you look it up, you can Google it, it can say, hey, here's the deal. I want you to Google key passages in the New Testament about marriage. And always Ephesians 5 comes up. Always it starts with verse 22. And it is the substance of it, and it's beautiful and it's awesome. But I think it's tragic because we miss what I think is the foundation of marriage, which starts in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. And goes to verse 21. And so this morning we're going to talk about the foundation of this thing called marriage. Okay? So let's jump in and look at it. Let's go to Ephesians 5, verse 15. Just let me read it to you a little bit here. It says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. And so he's exhorting them, he's teaching them, he's guiding them about how to live life. All right? And he says, hey, be careful how you walk. How you live your life matters. It really does matter because it impacts you and others all around you. How you live, how you act, how you behave, what you do with your life, what you do with your time, what you do with your words, what you do with your behavior. It all matters. And don't be unwise about it, but be really wise and thoughtful about how you do it. Making the best of the time because the days are evil. It matters what you do and how you live. Right? Then he goes on and he says, therefore, as a result, don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Understand what God's will, because when we look back, that God's will is both good and acceptable and perfect. So understand what his will is. Dig in, understand it, grab onto it, stick it in your pocket, live with it, internalize it, memorize it, work on it, develop it, understand the will of God. And then it says, and here he's going to kind of throw out a beginning of it, and do not get drunk with wine, for that's just debauchery. It's a waste is what debauchery means. It's just wasteful stuff. And so, but he's going to use it as an illustration of getting drunk with wine, which when you do get drunk with wine, when you drink too much, too often, what it does is it takes control of your life and it empowers you. Usually empowers you to do things that you wouldn't do normally, right? But it controls and empowers you. And so he says, don't get drunk with wine, for that's just debauchery. It's a waste. But be filled, controlled, and empowered by the Spirit of God. Now, let's just think about that for a second. If you're going to be controlled by his Spirit, in our culture, on the most part, people would say, oh, that just sounds stupid. Like, what do you mean be filled with the Spirit of God? That means that you're going to be some sort of religious freak. You know, you're just going to be kind of weird. You're going to be this judgmental, religious weirdo. And I remember when I first became a Christian, I went to college, they started talking about this thing called the Spirit-filled life. And I remember thinking, hey, I'm not totally sure I'm into that. I really love the idea of Jesus. I love the idea of God the Father. I'm in. What do you mean the Holy Spirit? I don't want to be weird. I don't want to be kind of carrying the weird sign around. And I mean, it had all sorts of images of what that looked like, right? I don't want to be out of my mind and kind of, I don't know, it just felt like kind of a weird deal, And so they began talking about this thing called the Spirit-filled life. But eventually I began to understand that what it means is for him to fill me up into the real life, to empower me to live what he really intended life to be like, the fullness of life. And I began to understand that it didn't mean you had to be some sort of weirdo and kind of isolated. But you could live right in the middle of the world and live out what he gives you. And I began to be so attracted to what that meant and what it is. And look at this. He's going to give us kind of 4 things here. Don't be drunk with wine, for that's a waste, but be filled with the Spirit. Here's 4 things. Addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Speaking to one another in the fullness of the truth of God and the melody that it brings with it. And you can sing it literally, or you can sing it into the heart of someone else. But addressing one another with the beauty of the fullness of who God is. Be a blessing to people. To be filled with His Spirit means to infuse that into others. In whatever way you can. In whatever way He leads you. And then secondly, in verse 19, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart. I was so glad it says with your heart. Because I can't sing all that well, right? No, but I can't. But it's a melody in your heart to the Lord. Is there a melody in your heart about life? Now, you guys, we live in a crazy world, right? We do. And sometimes it can be so discouraging. Sometimes I watch the things that have been going on in Washington, D.C., and I just want to say, why don't we just fire all of you? As a group, you guys are an F. Let's just fire all of you and let's start over. It just drives me nuts. And I just think, what in the world's going on? And I forget that there is a melody in my heart to the Lord Himself. Singing and making a melody. The third, look at this. Giving thanks always for everything to God the Father in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Being thankful for everything always. Doesn't mean that everything is a great thing, but to be thankful for the reality that in the midst of life He is there. And He is working, and He is providential, and He's sovereign, and He is working things out to have a thankfulness in our heart. Wow, that's incredible. And then look in verse 21. Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's a result of the Spirit-filled life. Wow, you guys, and here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to put it in a chart form. I think it makes it maybe a little easier this morning, a little bit of change of pace. So here's my chart, okay? So we're going to fill in the chart. Well, there it is, right there. Okay. So here's the deal. We're going to put it in chart form. So be careful how you live. Discover the heart and the will of God. That's the big idea, right? And then kind of this umbrella, he says, be filled with the Spirit. Don't be drunk with wine. Don't be controlled by everything else. But be filled with God's Spirit. Let it control you. And then it says, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Singing and making a melody to the Lord with your heart. Giving thanks in all things and everything to God the Father through the Lord Jesus Christ. And submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, let's pull submitting to one another over into the middle. This is what we're going to talk about today. In verse 21, it's going to say about submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And there are really 3 places that the scriptures are going to talk about this. In Ephesians chapter 6, there's going to be employers and employees, basically, is what it's talking about. It's really an indentured servant kind of environment. How to treat each other. So it's going to be way over here on the right. Let's put employers, employees. And then the next one over is going to be parents and children. It's going to tell you how to do this mutual submission. But then in Ephesians 22 and 23, it's going to talk about husbands and wives, how to live this out. Okay? Now, let's jump in. I want to just think, how does that look? Now, so this idea of submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ, let's highlight out of reverence for Christ. We mutually submit to one another because we love Him and honor Him and have a reverence for Him that we respect Him so highly that out of our relationship with Him, we're willing to submit to one another. That's really where it comes from. It doesn't come from just our decision to submit to each other. It comes from an honor and a reverence for God Himself. that amazing? That's where it comes from. This is a personal walk that each one of us has to have. And out of that we submit to each other. Let's highlight submit to each other. It's a mutual submitting. This word in the Greek really means that I am willing to place myself underneath someone else. And here he's saying, submitting in our relationships to each other. All of our relationships, being willing to place myself underneath the other person and serve them. Wow, that's a powerful thought, right? And then we're going to look at it especially in this area of husbands and wives. So as we take this passage, I think there are five things that I'd like to look at. 5 practical ways to mutually submit as a husband and wife. Okay? First one, tenaciously make one another an essential priority. If they are going to leave and cleave, remember we talked about that in Genesis? It says that you're going to leave your mother and father and you're going to cleave to your wife. You're going to like a barnacle with her. You're going to connect. You make each other a priority. We live in a world that vies for our attention in so many different ways. Right? Work, it's demanding. It desires a lot of us. Sometimes our hobbies begin to desire a lot from us. Sometimes extracurricular activities. Sometimes whatever it is, you get really busy. And then you start to have kids, and then they have 18,000 games on one afternoon, and you're like, that's really busy. And then by the time you get home, all you want to do is go in your bedroom and fall over into bed. Because then you had to get the kids to bed, right? And they got up 18 times to suggest, hey, I'm really hungry, and like, hey, you just had 3 dinners. I mean, well, what's wrong? But you know what I mean? You're just exhausted. And you don't have time to make this relationship an essential priority. But you have to. You have to be connected, a barnacle to each other. You have to tenaciously make one another an essential priority. Because someday, all those other things are going to go away. Kids are going to grow up and leave. You're going to retire. You won't be able to do your hobby anymore. And then you're going to be in this place. And you'll say, I don't even know this person. I don't even know you. And that's a terrible place to be. So to make each other an essential priority. Secondly, commit yourself to having no secrets or unrevealed important information. Right? It says that they were naked and unashamed. They shared it all. They shared everything. Sometimes in relationships we begin to have secrets. We begin to withhold important information. It ought not to be that way. Because a relationship is built on trust, right? It's not really actually built on love. It's built on trust. And when you trust one another, you can have a mutual and mature love. And so if you're going to trust one another, you can't withhold information. Like the couple that I did some counseling with, but when they moved to the Northwest and they got married, and all of a sudden when he came home 3 months into the marriage and there was a letter there from the health department, and he opened it up and it was her latest test for her sexually transmitted disease that she had never told him about. And it rocked his world, and then he went and got tested and he had it too. And it destroyed their marriage because he wanted to trust her and he couldn't. You can't withhold important information about life. You got to put it out there. You share it with each other. Thirdly, courageously and honestly and graciously reveal your thoughts, desires, and preferences. To submit yourself to someone else, mutually submit to each other, you have to be present. You have to bring to the table who you are, what you think, your preferences, your desires, your thoughts. You got to bring it to the table. And if you don't, you're not participating. And if you're not participating, it's not going to work. I had a couple I went to college with, and I remember one day she said to me, in the midst of them getting married in Waterloo, Iowa, it was really hot, it was terrible. But I was talking to her, and she said, we have never had a fight. We've never had a conflict. And I remember as a college student thinking, man, that is awesome. That's incredible. That must be the model. You guys must be the greatest. You guys might want to write a book, do a video series. You got to do something like that. Well, 8 years later, when they divorced, I asked her, what was the deal? And she said, We didn't have conflict because I didn't participate. I never brought myself to the table. I only did what he wanted. And eventually I couldn't live with that. And when I did bring myself to the table, he didn't care. I thought, wow. So you got to bring yourself to the table. If you're going to submit, it's like submitting your term paper, right? Your professor says, I want you to write on a certain thing. And you got to do the research. And you got to bring your thoughts to the table, right? And then he's going to grade it. Well, the same thing in a marriage. Courageously and honestly and graciously reveal your thoughts, desires, and preferences. Now, fourth, though, to kind of balance that, you have to be willing to sacrificially defer to one another for the good of the team. Yes, this is my preference. Yes, these are my thoughts. Yes, this is what I desire. But we're a team, and I am willing to submit it. I am willing to defer to you because of the good of the team. Now, if both people say, hey, man, I am here for the best of both of us, right? We're committed to each other's good. Can't you just figure out, it probably can negotiate something that works, right? Of course they can. If you come to the place where it's for the good. One season, I was traveling, and I was speaking at a Campus Crusade student retreat up in the mountains outside of Tucson, Arizona. And when I got there early, it was on a Friday, I went into this secondhand store, and there was a picture there of Chief Geronimo horseback. And next to Chief Geronimo was his son standing there with a toddler in his arms. And so that would have been Geronimo's grandson. And they were selling the picture for $25. And I said, well, what's the deal? And they said, well, this little grandson, which they called Chief Geronimo III, he lives here in town. He's 105 years old. He lives in a house that has a dirt floor. He chops his own wood. He drives his own van. And you'll see him around town. It's just this little place called Oracle, Arizona. And I thought, well, that's cool. And I kind of like history. So I bought the picture. And so later on Sunday when I was leaving town, sure enough, outside of this little grocery store was a van that on the back, scribbled in yellow paint, was Chief Geronimo III. And I went, when do you get to meet a 105-year-old Indian? Not very often. So I parked, I went into this grocery store, and sure enough, in the back corner, I see this guy who was clearly 105. It was amazing. You know, the wrinkles in his face were deeper than the Grand Canyon. I mean, it was fabulous. So I thought, I got to talk to this guy, you know? And so I said hi, and we had a little conversation. And I thought, okay, that's the coolest thing ever, you know? And so I brought the picture home, and I was so excited about it, and Diane was excited about it. And I said, well, let's get it framed, you know? And so we went down to the frame shop, and we started looking around at all this stuff. And somehow she kind of ended up going over that side, and I ended up on this side, and we both kind of met back in the middle. And we each had a frame and a matting. But they were different. And so we began to have a discussion about which frame and which matting was better. And eventually our discussion came to a place where we didn't agree. And so with absolute maturity, I solved the problem. I said, it's my picture. I was a total jerk. And so we went up to the counter, and we were still having this conflict, and it was fairly clear that we were having a marital adjustment opportunity over this picture. And eventually what happened is when we brought it up there, the gal said, well, I'll be honest with you. I think your frame with your matting is better than either one. And we put them together, and we said, yeah, it probably does. I have it in my office. And it's a great reminder to me that together, if we negotiate an agreement, we probably come out with something better than ever before, right? And so if we're willing to defer and not demand, not it's my picture. What an attitude, right? To sacrificially defer to one another for the good of the team. I bet that works, right? All right, fifth. To honor the unique roles and responsibilities that God has designed for each partner. To honor the uniqueness of what God has done in each one of us. To understand them, to embrace them, to honor them, to do them. And that means we're going to have to understand each other, right? I have another chart for you this morning. It looks like this. looks just like that. And I want to talk real quickly about three things. His role and her role, biblically. Each of our needs. And I want to talk about the response that each one of us has to the role of the other person. Okay? First of all, his role. And a lot of this is taken out of a book that I think is an awesome book. I'd encourage you to even get it. It's called Rocking the Roles by Robert Lewis. He's the pastor down at Fellowship Bible in Little Rock. Great stuff called Rocking the Roles. But in that, we'll start with his role. Biblical role for a guy is to be a servant leader. Yes, he's supposed to lead. Yes, the scriptures call him the head. But the head is to care for and sacrifice for the rest of the body. He is to be a servant leader. That's his role. Now, let's look at the role of the gal. The biblical, in the Bible, we're going to talk about her being a helper, a lover. That's what the scriptures talk about, a helper-lover. Now remember, this helper-lover isn't exactly like we turn it into. But this word helper is ezer, remember? The Hebrew word ezer, which means to be a warrior, a strong player. So let's just change the picture here for a second. It means to be Xena, the warrior princess. That's really what it's talking about. To be a helper-lover means that the depths of the ability of a woman to love. You guys have seen it. You've experienced it. The depth of her ability to love. Is that just the most powerful thing on earth? Her ability to be a helper like Xena. To stand with her man and to have her sword out and ready to roll. Don't mess with my guy. Stand back to back and I'm going to defend him with everything I've got. And you don't know who you're messing with. When Mama Bear ain't happy, no one's going to be happy because she's going to stand up and defend it. It is not this wimpy role. It is a powerful role. The unique role that only God made a woman to be a helper-lover. Now, you guys, as a servant leader, your wife has some needs. And if you're going to serve her and lead her, you have to understand some of the needs in her life. And these are a little bit on the, every woman's a little different, right? But I think there's a lot of truth to these. I think it really helps us. First of all, she needs your companionship. She needs you to be a companion. She needs you to be with her. She doesn't want to be alone in the marriage. She wants to have you as a companion. And you have to understand that. As a servant leader, to understand it and to relate to it and dig in and do something about it. Secondly, she needs security. Not because she's insecure, but if she's going to entrust herself to you, she has to know that you're not going to be crazy and stupid. That you create security. Help her understand where we're at in life, what's going on. Di and I share information about where we're at financially. Frankly, she's the better practical person with money than I am. But I can't be totally disconnected from it, right? We have to create security. She knows that I'm engaged in care to help that issue of security. Third, significance. You don't give her significance. You simply reflect on the significance that is already there. But a woman needs you to tell her that you see it, that you understand it, that you honor it, that you recognize it, that you'll embrace it. This amazing significance of this woman in your life. That's one of her deepest needs. And she'll look for it because if you won't give it, maybe someone else will, and that is an unhealthy place to be. But to communicate the significance of who she is as a person and the unique way that God has designed her. And then fourth, she needs that you'll be emotionally responsive. Now, you guys, I don't know exactly if it's from the fall or is it just the uniqueness, but women do seem to be a little more dialed in emotionally than guys. And when we're not, it's hard for them. They'd like us to respond and to their emotional world. Doesn't mean we have to not be ourselves. But to say, I get it. or I care, I understand, I know it hurts. And it's not easy. I would say this is one of the places where I'm not very good at times, is relating to the emotional world. Now, my wife is not over like this wild emotional person. She's very stable. But she is in touch with some things on the inside that I'm not very in touch with as well. And for a husband to clue in to her emotional world gives her life. It's one of her greatest needs. So as you're a servant leader, you need to understand her need for compassion, security, significance, and emotional responsiveness. Right? Hey guys, gals, I'm sorry, as a helper lover, your husband has some needs also. Remember it says it's not good for man to be alone, but he needed a helper? Well, the companionship in his life is just the same. He loves for you to do activities with him. He needs you to be a part of it. Be a companion. Now, every couple's different. You may not need to go hunting together or to go shopping together. I don't know what it is where you don't do it. But you need to be together. She needs a companion in life. And so you need to meet that need, gals, of he as a companion. Secondly is for support. He may seem strong, but he really does need support. He wasn't made to be alone. He needs your support. Now, you don't need to prop him up. He needs to be strong on his own. But to have you there with him as a companion and a support is a powerful thing in a guy's life. Third, to be admired. I don't think a gal can really, frankly, understand this. For you, even though he's not perfect, to admire him gives a man life. It fills up. His chest gets just a little bigger when his wife admires him. It's really powerful. And fourth is a physical responsiveness. Where the gal needs an emotional responsiveness, he needs a physical responsiveness. And we're not talking just sex. We're talking about just a physical reality. I'll tell you what, you can't even imagine what it does to a guy's life. If you're somewhere together, maybe let's say a party at someone's house, and wife, if you just come up and put your hand on his elbow, all of a sudden he's just it brings life into it. You just put your hand on his elbow. And you know what he said? He's standing there with his friends, and you put your hand on his elbow, and he goes, yeah, she's with me. She likes me. She thinks I'm worth standing close to. And he like forgets what they're talking about. Oh, we were talking about the Super Bowl? I forgot. My wife put her hand on my elbow. And there's just, when he puts his hand on your shoulder, to acknowledge it, to respond. It's not this, hey, let's turn it into some sort of wild sex scene. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just a touch and a care and a concern for each other. It's really incredibly powerful. You know, also, there's a role I think that each of us have to how we respond to the other one's role, right? So here's the deal. Up at the top, his response to her role. The servant leader's response to the helper lover needs to be praise. You know, in Proverbs 31, it describes this woman who has incredible skills and abilities. She's doing deals. She's like fixing the house. She's raising the kids. She's got real estate going. She's an amazing gal. And it says that her husband praises her. Now, you guys, she's not going to be perfect, okay? Let's just give that stupid up, right? She's not going to be a perfect woman. No one's perfect. But that's not the issue. The issue is she needs someone to praise her and recognize her, see her, and to praise her. It's really love. We were put a different word on it. Let's just put it, someone who's going to love her, to praise her for who she is. That she's a helper lover, and I see it. Hey, man, you are my Xena. You're my princess warrior. You're the lover. You have incredible abilities. I need to praise you. Right? She's dying for it. Now, there's also a response that she has to his role. What does the helper lover say or do to the servant leader? And it's respect. That's what we're going to find in the rest part of Ephesians. It's going to be respect. That she goes, I understand the things that you carry with you and the responsibilities. And he's not going to be perfect. Gals, he's not going to be perfect about it, right? If you're waiting for the perfect guy, it's not going to happen. But you give him your respect. Which really, I think, is the biblical term of submission. I'll put myself under you out of respect for your role. Here's the thing. The woman's role is to be a helper lover. Her role is not to be submissive. That's, I think, a huge mistake that we've made in the Christian church, and usually preach it, is that, okay, guys, you be the leader, you be the head. Gal, you be submissive. This is all going to work. It's not what the Bible says. Her role is not to be submissive. Her role is to be a helper lover, to be Zena. Her response to her husband, not to all men, her response to her husband is respect and submission. Maybe the most powerful situation I remember, when I was in California, I had a wife come to me and she was totally on the warpath. She was so angry. She came to see me so that I could help put her husband in his place. She had great reasons. I mean, she built a case, and here's what I want you to help nail this dude. And so here was the deal, and I understood her problem. They lived in one school district, and he bought a house in another school district that was nicer. And so he wanted to move the family to the nicer house, right? Of course. But he wanted his kids to go to the schools in the other district where they were coming from, because it was a better school district. And so what he wanted to do was he wanted to move the kids and all the family, but retain this address as where they were living so they could go to those schools. And his wife thought it was unethical, and it was wrong, and it would hurt them in the long run. And so she said, no, we're not doing it. And he said, yes, we are. And she said, no, we're not. And he said, yes, we are. And you can imagine what escalated. And she was so bent on it because she felt the ethical responsibility. He did not. And so she came to me and said, please help me put him in his place. And I said, well, it seems like an unwinnable deal to me. If I get involved, I think this is between you two. You need to figure it out. And I would encourage you to submit to him. And she said, no, you're out of your mind. You're a crazy person. This is the dumbest thing in the world. Why would I ever agree to doing something that was wrong and something that was unethical? I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, you can stick to that if you want to, but what's going to happen to this relationship? And it was turning into a war zone. And they were going to have it out, right? And she started talking about divorcing him and this and that. And I said, okay, whoa, wait a second. What if you submitted to him, but not out of weakness, but out of strength? And she said, well, what are you talking about? And so I said to her, here's what I'd encourage you to do. I'd encourage you to go home, and I'd encourage you to say to him, hey, husband, his name was John. John, here's the deal. You are responsible to be the leader and the servant of our family. I am relying on you to be a man of integrity and to protect the integrity of our family and our kids. I am relying on you to do that in my life. That is your God-given responsibility. And mine is to submit to you. And so this is your decision. But I am relying on you to do what is right. And so I'm no longer at war with you. I'm at peace because I've said what I think is right and good. And I'm going to give you the responsibility that God gave you. And I expect you to live it out. And I'm not going to be Miss Cold and angry and mean. I'm going to love you. I'm going to be kind to you. But I'm expecting you to do your job. Wow. And she did it. And he decided to do it anyway. And about 6 months later, it became evident because their kids were in athletics that their kids had violated school district rules. And they lost their position on their teams and had to change schools. And she didn't say, I told you so. But he knew she had told him so. And he damaged his family, and he damaged his kids, and he damaged the relationships. But she submitted to him, and she suffered the pain of the submission. Now, you can take that too far and too much. But guys, they're depending on us to be a servant leader. Because what did he violate in all of that? He violated everything. Companionship, the security, the significance, understanding the emotional world and the reality of where she's at. He would have been wise to have listened. He did not. And he damaged it deeply. Wow. So when we talk about kind of going back, what do we do with this? What do we do with it? Here's my thoughts. I'd like you to pick one way that you could be mutually submissive to your husband or wife. If you're here this morning and you're not married, maybe you say, how do I apply some of this even in my own relationships? But in your marriage, I'd like you to pick one. Here are the 5 that I threw out there. Look at them for a second. What's one that maybe you could do? Maybe it's you need to tenaciously make each other a priority. You've been too busy doing other stuff. Maybe you need more time. Maybe, let's get away for a weekend. We got to get away. We need to be together. Let's do it. Or maybe you need to commit yourself to no more secrets, no more lying, no more unrevealed important things. Stop living in the shadows. Bring it out. Tell the truth. Include her. Let it all be on the table so you can be together, mutually submit to each other. Maybe you need to courageously and honestly and graciously reveal your thoughts, desires, and passions. If you haven't been participating, you need to participate. Now, is that going to create some little bit of earthquake in the relationship? Probably. But maybe you need to also then be willing to sacrificially defer to one another for the good of the team. What do you need to defer to? What do you need to give up? Or are there any parts of the roles that you need to really dig into? Let's go back to that chart. Guys, maybe there's a place your wife needs you as a companion more. Or she needs you to really do some things that give security. Or you need to communicate significance. Or you need to dig into her emotional world and care about it a little bit more. Or gals, maybe you need to be with him more. Support. Give him affirmation. Give him what he needs in affirmation or an admiration. Maybe you need to touch his elbow. Just touch his elbow. I don't know what it is, but for sure she needs your praise and he needs your respect. And here's the deal. These are gifts you give each other. They are not things you earn. Here's what we always say. I will love her when she's more lovable. Right? She just needs to be a little more lovable, and then I'll love her, then I'll praise her, but she needs to do it better. That's crazy. Because it's not something you earn, it's a gift that you give. Or for gals, we say, I'll respect him when he's more respectable. Right? It's crazy, because we're never going to be perfectly respectable. Every guy's got his broken sides. But to respect him for the position that God has given him, it'll encourage him. These are gifts that you give one another. Maybe you need to give that gift today. So as we wrap up, here's the deal. I just want to review. Be careful how you live. Discover the heart and the will of God. Be careful how you live, especially in your marriages. And here's the deal. The foundation of a really good marriage is not just being mutually submissive to each other. It is being filled with the Spirit of God. Letting him live his life in us and through us. To empower us, to control us. It starts by your walk with Christ. Not just your walk with your wife or husband. And your walk with Christ will then begin to spill over into this relationship. To be filled with the Spirit. And so this morning, we're going to celebrate communion. And what we do when we come and celebrate communion as God's people is that we really celebrate the lordship of Christ in his crucifixion and in his resurrection. that we might be able to live out the life that he's called us to, a Christ-filled life. He gave his body broken for us. He gave his blood shed for us to make us brand new. That blood would cover our sin. And we could have a life that is filled with him. So this morning as you come, I want you to think through, God, what are you calling me to? And I want to come and I want to celebrate this communion. And celebrate what you have done for me. That you forgave me and changed me. You can fill me and empower me. So that I might live out the life of Christ in me. And do it in my relationships, in every arena of our lives. But maybe especially, if you're married this morning, say, I'm recommitting. I'm driving a stake deep in the ground and I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying and I'm going to see you and I'm going to care for you. I'm going to be a servant leader. I'm going to be a helper lover. And that together, we've got each other's back. And we're going to make this work. That's what I want you to think through. So take a minute and just say, okay, God, you have work to do in my life. I choose it. I choose what you want to do. I choose it. And I come here to celebrate and acknowledge it. That you can fill me with your Spirit so I can live this. Let's pray. Father, we come before you because there's only one place to come for the reality of you filling us up with you, and that's you. We come to before you. And as a result, there's all sorts of areas of our lives that we need you. We want to be full of thanks. We want to sing praises. We want to honor each other with your beautiful word. But we also want to mutually submit to each other. And in this area of husband and wife, in a marriage, we bring ourselves as broken people, inadequate people, non-perfect people. Not one husband here is perfect. Not one wife is perfect. But Father, we want to live honestly before you. And if we'll turn and bring it in the light, you are an incredible God who sent your Son to die for us. To take all of our brokenness and forgive it. To take all the shame and the guilt and to forgive it. And to head us in a new direction. A new trajectory. Something that has unity, care and concern and compassion, tenacity, courage, togetherness. And Father, the things that you brought to our mind even this morning, that we need to walk out of this room and to take care of. We ask that you would empower us with your Spirit to do it. And Father, as we come to this table, we come here to remember what Jesus did for us. We come to celebrate the reality of a resurrected Christ. And one that would fill us. And so we come here with our hearts both broken and yet full to let you touch us. And Father, we want you to know that we do love you. But we recognize that you loved us first. You loved us most. And so when we come here, we come to experience that. And to have you live it in us and through us. And so we pray these in Jesus' name.